You've probably dealt with someone who keeps pushing you, saying just enough to provoke you, trying to pull a reaction out of you. And no matter how calm you try to stay, you still end up giving them something. Why does that keep happening? And why do they seem to benefit from it? What if the advantage isn't in confronting them, but in letting them turn against themselves? In this video, you'll see exactly how toxic people depend on your reactions and what happens when you remove that completely. Stay until the end, because the final shift is where their control breaks, and most people never see it happening. Imagine you're in a room with someone, and you can feel it before anything is even said. The tension is already there, quiet but heavy. This person could be a colleague, a family member, maybe even someone you once trusted. But now, everything they say feels calculated. They use small remarks, subtle jabs hidden as jokes, comments that sound harmless on the surface but aren't. Each word is placed carefully, not to communicate, but to provoke something out of you. And you can feel it building, the urge to respond, to correct them, to defend yourself. That's exactly what they want. They want a reaction. Anger, frustration, emotion. They need you to respond so they can feel in control. The moment you react, it gives them confirmation that they can reach you, that they can influence how you feel. And most people, without even realizing it, step right into this pattern. They engage, they argue, they try to explain themselves, thinking they can fix the situation by being reasonable. But this isn't a situation built on reason. This is a game. And it's designed in a way where you can't win by playing along. The moment you react, even slightly, you've already given something away. You've handed over control, not in a dramatic way, but in a quiet, unnoticed one. And in doing that, you've reinforced exactly what they were trying to prove, that they can get to you whenever they choose. You become predictable, like something they can control without effort. And once that happens, they don't even need to try anymore. But what if there was another way to handle this? One that doesn't involve arguing, explaining, or getting pulled into their chaos? A way where you don't raise your voice, you don't defend yourself, and you don't give them anything to work with. Instead of reacting, you create something different. An empty space where their words have nothing to attach to. No reaction, no resistance, no energy for them to feed on. You're still there, fully aware, but you're not participating in the game they're trying to play. And that changes the entire dynamic in a way most people don't expect. This isn't about fighting back harder, because that only escalates things. It's about stepping out of the pattern completely, observing instead of engaging, letting their behavior unfold on its own until it starts working against them. And over time, something shifts. The same tactics they rely on begin to lose their effect, not because you stopped them, but because you stopped feeding them. Most people are taught to respond immediately, to stand their ground, to prove themselves, to push back. But in situations like this, those reactions don't solve anything. They actually strengthen the person trying to provoke you. The real advantage doesn't come from reacting louder. It comes from becoming still. Because in the middle of all that noise, the one thing that can't be controlled is someone who refuses to move. Most people think this is about staying calm, but that's only the surface. What happens if you simply refuse to play along at all? When you deny a toxic person the reaction they're looking for, something unusual starts to happen. There's a gap, a kind of void, where their words don't land the way they expect. Instead of pulling something out of you, their behavior begins to reflect back on them, making their intent more visible, and your silence in that moment carries more weight than any response could. By choosing not to engage, you shift positions. You're no longer part of the exchange, you're watching it. This is where real control begins, not through action but through restraint. And this is where most people make the mistake that keeps them stuck. Toxic people depend on chaos to feel in control. Beneath it, there's usually insecurity, a need to pull something out of you so they can feel some kind of influence. Your reactions become that fuel, which is why they keep pushing, manipulating, and creating tension, because calmness doesn't give them anything to work with. And that's the part most people miss. Their behavior isn't really about you. It comes from something within them, a kind of emptiness they try to fill by getting a response. Once you see that clearly, the situation starts to look very different. If you understand this next part, you stop taking any of it personally. Toxic individuals tend to rely on a set of patterns they use again and again to stay in control. These aren't random behaviors. They're deliberate, and over time they become very effective. One of the most common tactics is gaslighting, a quiet form of manipulation where they slowly distort your sense of what's real. They'll deny things you clearly remember, twist your words, or make you question your own judgment. And the more it happens, the more it starts to affect your confidence, until you begin second-guessing yourself instead of trusting what you know. It doesn't happen all at once. It builds gradually, which is why it's so difficult to notice in the moment. Another pattern they rely on is projection, placing their own traits onto you. Someone who lies regularly will accuse others of being dishonest. Someone who manipulates will start calling everyone else manipulative. And if you're not paying attention, it pulls you into defending something that was never yours to begin with. Their tactics only work because they follow a pattern most people never notice. This works as a kind of psychological defense for them, and it serves more than one purpose at the same time. First, it lets them avoid facing their own behavior by placing it onto someone else, shifting the focus away from themselves. And second, it pulls you into a defensive position where you feel the need to explain, justify, or correct what they're saying. While you're doing that, their own actions go unnoticed. It's a form of misdirection. Your attention is moved exactly where they want it, while the real issue stays hidden. And alongside this, they often play the victim. Even in situations they started, they'll reshape the story to make it seem like they were the ones hurt, misunderstood, or treated unfairly. This creates sympathy from others and puts pressure on you, making you look like the one at fault. And once that perception is in place, it becomes much harder to hold them accountable, because the entire situation has been turned around without most people even noticing it. And when others start believing that version of the story, they can end up taking their side without fully understanding what's happening, sometimes even turning against you and adding to the pressure. This creates a sense of isolation, where it feels like the situation is shifting further out of your control. On top of that, they often rely on a pattern that keeps people emotionally hooked without realizing it. One moment, they're kind, supportive, even generous. And the next, they become distant, critical, or dismissive. That constant shift creates uncertainty, and over time, it pulls you in deeper. You start holding on to the moments where things felt good, hoping they'll return, even as the negative behavior continues. And that's what makes it difficult to step away. Because you're not just dealing with one consistent pattern, you're dealing with something that keeps changing. It creates confusion, attachment, and a kind of dependence that builds slowly, making it harder to see the situation clearly. And when you stop feeding that pattern, something unexpected starts to happen. At the far end of this spectrum, you'll often find the narcissist, someone whose identity depends heavily on constant attention and validation. Underneath it, there's a kind of instability, so any reaction, whether positive or negative, becomes something they rely on. The moment you respond, you're feeding that cycle, reinforcing the image they're trying to maintain. But when there's no reaction, no engagement, something different starts to happen. That support disappears, and without it, the structure they've built becomes harder to hold together. You don't confront it directly, you simply stop contributing to it. And over time, that absence speaks louder than anything you could say. Toxic individuals tend to operate within a fragile kind of balance, like something that only holds together as long as you keep responding. They rely on your reactions to keep that pattern going, to maintain their sense of control. But the moment you stop reacting, it's like stepping out of that structure completely. The pattern they depend on suddenly has nothing to connect to, and their usual approach doesn't work the way it used to. What once created tension now just hangs there, unresolved, without direction. And in that silence, something shifts. They're left with their own behavior, without the response they expect, and the dynamic they relied on starts to lose its shape. For someone who depends on reactions, your silence becomes something they don't know how to handle. The usual tactics, the insults, the drama, the attempts to provoke, don't land the way they expect, and that creates a kind of emptiness they're not used to. And over time, that absence becomes more frustrating than any argument ever could, because it signals something they can't control. Without feedback, without resistance, their behavior has nothing to build on, and that starts to affect how they carry themselves. In many cases, they push harder, escalate, try new angles, and in doing so, they reveal more than they intended. And through all of it, your role doesn't change. You stay steady, you stay composed, and you don't step back into the pattern. Because once that space is created, it begins to work on its own, showing things that no reaction ever could. This is the point where the dynamic begins to reverse. If you're starting to notice how much control people gain just from your reactions, then this is where most people struggle. They understand it, but they don't know how to actually stay composed in the moment. That's exactly what the Art of Strategic Indifference is built for. It breaks down how to detach, stay controlled under pressure, and stop giving people the emotional response they're looking for. If that's something you're working on, the link is in the description. Your calm, steady non-reaction doesn't go unnoticed. And it's not just the toxic person who sees it. When you choose not to engage, you start to stand out in a different way, as something stable, while everything around you becomes more obvious. People begin to notice the contrast. One person reacting, losing control, and the other remaining composed without saying much. And that difference speaks for itself. Your silence doesn't hide anything. It actually brings their behavior into clearer view. Over time, that shift changes how others see the situation. Their actions begin to define them, without you needing to explain anything. You don't have to defend yourself, because the way they act starts to do that on its own. And by staying out of it, by not stepping into their pattern, you allow the dynamic to reveal itself exactly as it is. In the workplace, someone who tries to provoke you is often doing it for a reason: to unsettle you, to make you look reactive, or to gain an advantage. Their comments may come across as subtle, passive-aggressive, or disguised as feedback, but the intention is usually the same: to pull you into an emotional response. Instead of stepping into that pattern, you respond in a way that gives them nothing to work with. Something simple, controlled, and neutral, like "thank you for the feedback." That kind of response doesn't escalate anything, and it doesn't give them the reaction they're expecting. Over time, as you stay consistent, the contrast becomes clearer. You remain composed, while their behavior becomes more noticeable. And in that environment, people begin to see what's really happening, who is creating tension and who is not. You don't need to point it out or report it directly, because the pattern starts to show on its own. Their behavior begins to define them, without you having to say anything at all. In relationships, manipulators often rely on guilt and emotional pressure to stay in control. When you're accused unfairly, the instinct is to defend yourself, to explain, to correct what's being said. But that usually pulls you deeper into their pattern. Instead, you stay grounded and respond with something simple and clear, without emotion. "You were late. We can talk when you're ready for a calm conversation." You're not arguing, you're not escalating, you're just setting a boundary and stepping back from the tension. And when you stay consistent with that, something starts to shift. Their reactions become more visible, more intense, and harder to justify. Over time, that contrast exposes what's really driving the situation: the need for conflict, the need for control. And without your participation, that pattern begins to lose its effect. You're no longer part of the exchange, and without someone to engage with, the entire dynamic starts to fall apart. In social circles, there are always people who try to create division through subtle comments, backhanded compliments, or quiet gossip. The intention is usually the same: to pull you into a reaction or get you to take part in something that doesn't serve you. Instead of engaging, you respond in a simple, neutral way. Something like "thank you," and you leave it there without adding anything more. And when it comes to gossip, you don't participate at all. No reaction, no interest, no contribution. That neutrality removes the energy they rely on, and without it, their approach starts to lose its effect. They often look for people to join in, to reinforce what they're doing. But when you stay detached, that doesn't happen. Over time, others begin to notice the pattern, where the tension comes from, and who consistently stays out of it. And as that becomes clearer, the situation starts to shift on its own, without you needing to step in or explain anything. Mastering indifference starts with something simple, not action, but observation. Instead of reacting right away, you step back and watch what's actually happening, the patterns, the timing, the way they try to provoke a response. You begin to treat their behavior as information rather than something personal, something to understand, not something to fight. And as you do that, your outward presence stays calm and neutral. You don't reveal anything. You don't give them anything to work with. That distance changes everything. Because once you stop taking it personally, their tactics lose their impact. You start to recognize what they're going to do before they do it. And that puts you in a different position. The emotional reaction fades, and what's left is a pattern you can see clearly. And once you see it clearly, you're no longer affected by it in the same way. And this is where most people realize it was never about them to begin with. Once you shift into that observer mindset, the next step becomes restraint, choosing not to act on impulse. Restraint means you don't react immediately, you don't take the bait, and you allow silence to do the work instead. Your responses become minimal, neutral, almost uninteresting, like there's nothing there to engage with. And that's what makes it effective, because it removes the drama they're looking for. Over time, this kind of control changes the dynamic. Not in a loud way, but in a steady one. You're no longer being pulled by what they say or do. You're deciding how much of yourself you give and when. The final step is developing real emotional detachment, not forcing it, but understanding it clearly. Detachment means recognizing that their behavior isn't really about you. It comes from their own patterns, their own internal state. And once you start to see that, something changes. Their words don't carry the same weight anymore. The situation doesn't pull you in the way it used to. You begin to separate what's happening from how you respond to it, observing it without taking it on. Their chaos stays with them instead of becoming yours. And in that space, you remain steady, even when everything around you isn't. Because the real shift happens when the situation no longer controls how you feel. And without that, there's nothing left for them to take. In a world where strength is often seen as confrontation, silence becomes something most people overlook. When you choose not to react, you take away the very thing toxic people depend on, the response they're trying to pull from you. And in that absence, something shifts. Your calm starts to reflect their behavior back to them, making it more visible without you saying anything. This isn't weakness. It's control at a deeper level, where you're no longer tied to what's happening around you. You're letting go of the need to engage, to prove, to respond. And in that space, you regain control over yourself. Steady, unaffected, and no longer pulled into patterns that were never yours to begin with. The path of strategic indifference isn't built on quick responses or clever comebacks. It's something slower, more deliberate, where the results build over time. When you choose not to engage, you allow toxic behavior to reveal itself without interference. And as that continues, their credibility starts to weaken, while your position becomes more stable without you needing to force it. At the same time, something shifts within you. You become more steady, less reactive, and more aware of what's actually happening. And in the end, that's where the real advantage is. Not in changing them, but in no longer being affected by them at all. If this gave you a clearer way of handling these situations, leave a like so more people see it. What's one situation where this would have changed the outcome? Let me know in the comments. Share this with someone who deals with this regularly. Subscribe if you want more of this kind of thinking. And if you want to go deeper into this, how to stay composed, detach, and stop giving people control over your reactions. The Art of Strategic Indifference breaks it down clearly. The link is in the description. Watch the next video. This is only one layer of how these dynamics actually work.